Okay, so I'm CIndy Clough, and I have Coach Brainerd. I'm starting my 41st year.
And I'm Leslie Swiggum, and I coach at Wayzata, and I'm starting my 43rd year coaching. And between the two of us, we have a pretty significant history in the state of Minnesota in terms of moving dance team from really pretty much nothing to now at the Target Center. And it was young women, we were young at one point, volunteering our time, putting our necks out and risking a whole lot to make it what it is today.
Right, a lot of risks. I think we were so young that we had no idea what we were taking on and the liability that we were taking on.
Right.
Because at the time, I don't think we even thought of liability insurance or anything such as that. We were smart enough to form an association, and we had an attorney draw all of that up. And one of our board members, her name was Georgia Amdahl. Her husband was an attorney, and he wrote up our articles of incorporation or all of the significant legal things we needed to do. But just to step back a little bit, I think the first competition that was ever held was in 1976 at Anoka High School. There could have been one in 75, we're not quite sure.
Yeah.
But we know there was one in 76, and it was run by Marilee Gustafson, who was the coach at that time at Anoka. And back then, if you won state, you ran state. And so it was like, yay, we won, but no way. Now we have to run the state competition. And I went to that state competition and I was a senior that year at Brainerd High School, and my AD asked if a teacher would take us down, and her name was Colleen Carter, and she took us to watch that. And I watched my first state competition at Anoka High School, and I fell in love. I mean, I had not seen a dance team, and that was the first time. And they asked about 8 kids from our school because they were wanting to get one going. So they brought kids from different factions, and at the time I was a twirler. There was a person that was on the drill teamy palm squad, and there was a person that danced ballet. So they brought some different people to try to get the interest going. So that was my first experience that I watched it back in 76.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I think it went to Richfield for a year, and we're thinking the next year it went to Osseo Junior High.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next year, you ran it, right?
Right, because we won our first state tournament in 1978. And then, like Cindy said, when you won, you were in charge of it the next year. So it was kind of a mixed bag, yay, joy, but oh my. And so the next year, because it had grown significantly, even in just those couple of years, we had a AA division at Wayzata High School and a single A division at Annandale High School. We split it up, and then the finals were all at Wayzata High School, and the gym was just packed. And that year in 79, when we hosted it at Wayzata, we didn't win, and I was kind of joyful about that because it was so much work. Because remember, this is all before email. It was before cell phones. Everything, all communication had to be done by mail, and so there wasn't a quick turnaround on information. You weren't ever sure exactly how to contact people because we weren't part of the high school league, so there was no easy way to access even who the coaches were at the different state tournaments, or excuse me, at the different high schools. So it was kind of crazy what we did. And there were some different invitationals that we could attend as well. And for those that weren't around back then, when you went to an invitational, there were no trained judges. So you would bring your team, and you would judge all the other teams except your own that day. So to try to get your kids organized, but you're judging everybody else, really having no idea what you were doing. And then every time you went somewhere, whoever was hosting it, they developed their own score sheet. So you never knew what the score sheet was going to look like. You didn't know who was going to judge you because it was all random coaches. So it was something.
You just didn't know. And I think today people have no idea the evolution of what has occurred. And she's right with the judging sheet. I remember sitting up judging and not knowing what my kids were doing, my team. And at the time, we didn't have assistants very much either.
No,
it was just one
us.
coach because they would hardly ever pay for anything. My salary the first year was $200.
Mine was $250 in Wayzata.
Oh, wow.
It was
Yeah.
a step up, yeah.
Yeah, so you weren't getting paid. And then I remember some of the big things at that time were the St. Paul Winter Carnival competition was big. That was really big. And then the aquatennial was really big. So there were, and the season, now we have seasons. We have fall season and we have winter season. And people think they're long. And back then, there was no season. In my dance season never ends had a whole different meaning because it never ended. Pretty much, I remember one year the aquatennial was in March, and then right away you start preparing for the next year, and you did parades in the summer. We sometimes did 3 or 4 parades, and then you were expected to dance at the football games. And so it just didn't end. It was a year-round thing, and that salary of $200 covered that whole year. So obviously you weren't doing it for the money. But
No.
now the year that Minnesota Association of Dance Teams formed, it was just called MAD in the beginning. And that's because we were dance lines at the time. And then it changed to dance team in 95, I believe.
so.
In 95. And in the beginning, we held a meeting, and it was at Minnetonka High School, the first meeting. And it was in, I believe, late August. Late August. And it was in 1980, correct?
Yep.
And a group of us got together, and we still have that original letter. And I think it was about 12, maybe less than that.
Something like that.
Yeah, 10 people. And I know it was Leslie and I, and a group, I can't even remember, Joelle Burns. I can't think who else all was there. Sue Patno, maybe,
Yeah, she might have been there.
and a coach from Minnetonka, because it was held at Minnetonka. But we decided to form the Minnesota Association of Dance Teams on one morning on a Saturday. And I remember we went to Perkins afterwards.
Yes, we
but
did.
Yeah, so it was, and at that time, one of the things I remember, and I was thinking it was because I was up in Brainerd, but she said she felt the same way too, that you never knew what was happening. There was no such thing as long-range planning for your season or being organized, because you would just get something in the mail and go, oh, Fridley's having a competition. I think we're going to go. And you would find out about it a month before. You couldn't plan ahead because you didn't know who was holding one. And there were fewer events to go to. They weren't all the time. And some of the things that have changed, like conference and sections, and
Yeah, none of that.
there was none of that. I was thinking yesterday when I was reading the accolades of all our staff, how exciting it is that our kids can now win all conference and win, different awards, because back then there was no conference dance for sure, and no respect. So, okay, what else should we talk about?
And, I mean, to look at the growth, to think we started with hosting things in high schools, and then we needed to move to college campuses. So after the competition in 79 at Wayzata, in 1980 it was hosted at St. Olaf College. We stayed there a couple of years, and then that wasn't big enough, and then we moved to St. Cloud State, and we're there for a few years, and then it moved to what's now the Minneapolis Convention Center. It's been remodeled now, but they used to have a basketball floor they could lay down, and then we did
It was called the Minneapolis Auditorium at the time, right?
Yeah. And then we moved to St. Paul when it was the St. Paul Civic Center, which is now the Excel Center, and we've done things at Williams Arena, and it kind of bounced around.
Oh yeah, State was at Williams Arena for a while.
Yeah, for a while. And the high school league did not plan any of those. We were not part of them. Title IX was just beginning at this point, so women's sports were starting, and those of us that were part of the board, Cindy served for a really long time on the board, I don't know how many years.
12 years.
And I've served 34. And at the beginning, we thought, well, we need to get with the state high school league, but they didn't want to even hear about us because they considered us kind of fluff, not a sport. And so we asked early on, and they said, no, we don't have time for that. So we did it all ourselves. So we were renting out the Minneapolis Convention Center, Minneapolis Auditorium. We were renting out the St. Paul Civic Center. And this is a group of, at that point, there were 12 people on the board.
And we were running this big tournament.
Yeah,
and
plus coaching.
Plus coaching.
Yeah.
I can remember one year, I was in charge of judges and their food, and we didn't have a big budget. So I remember hauling coolers with their beverages and everything, because we didn't want to pay the cost at whatever arena we were in. And coaching too, and having to haul the food and the extra snacks, because we didn't want to pay the money for the, it was just so different. It's just hard to even
We hired
think
our
about
own security people to run security for the whole thing, and we'd have a police escort to bring, because we had all the cash that came in, and so we'd have a police escort the treasurer out at night with the cash, and then they'd bring it home and then deposit it on Monday morning. I can remember when I was coaching, and this was more with the Williams Arena kind of time when it had gotten really much, much bigger than it had originally. And I was coaching, and I was president of the association, so I had on a headset connected to all my board members who were doing all kinds of jobs plus coaching. And then I was head of security, and I had to be connected with the security people. So I had 2 headsets on with 2 microphones, and I would hear things from the board members. We got this issue, we got that issue, and then the security people, we got that. So I'm connecting with 2 different people plus coaching my kids.
Yeah.
So my kids knew that if Swig was looking up, that means somebody was talking to her, and you couldn't talk to her at that point because she's doing other stuff. And as soon as my eyes became level, then they knew to interact with me. So it was a real challenge, not only for those of us doing this amazing job of running this whole thing, but for our kids too. I mean, for them to understand that we've got this whole other thing going on, and we pulled it all together.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah. I'm thinking too that we always took a lot of heat that if our teams did win, it was because we were on the board
Right.
and we were running the state competition.
Yeah.
And we'd get a lot of negative feedback through the grapevine that, oh yeah, of course Wayzata won. Leslie's on the board, and
Yeah. And
or
she
Cindy's
knows
on the
the
board, and
judges,
she knows the
and-
judges.
yeah.
She brings them their food,
Yeah. We were running around like crazy
So-
people, and we would plan, I mean, think of the number of meetings that the board
Oh.
used to have, all-day Saturday meetings, because we did everything. And, but it was fun. It was so much fun. And those people that I worked on the board with, well, all 34 years, now I've just retired from being on the board, have become just wonderful friends. And us old timers, I mean, we're still good friends, and we've been through a lot together. And it's been an amazing journey to sit at the Target Center now and look at what it is. And it's because there were a few brave young women in our 20s
Yeah.
that took the risk and knew that this could be something. We were forward looking, knew it could be something. And somebody had to step up, somebody had to organize it, we had to train judges, we had to get a score sheet. And now looking at what happens at the Target Center it's unbelievable.
It is amazing when you think about it, because I think when I was doing the first meetings that first year, I think I was only 22
Yeah.
or 23. So now I'm going, whoa, that was
Right.
amazing. But
Yeah.
and one of our memorable, in not a good way, moments was when it was at a state competition, and I think we were at Williams Arena. St. Paul Civic
I think
Center.
it was St. Paul
when
Civic
this
Center,
happened,
yeah.
and the announcer, whoever wrote the list for the announcer, and he misannounced who was going to finals, and he added one more team, like say 8 were going to finals, he said 9. I don't remember what it was at the time. But then we had to go back and say, oh, sorry, you weren't supposed to be announced, you're not going to finals. Well, the district attorney for Hennepin County called us and wanted to shut down the state competition because they were, basically, it was accusing us of doing improper, and that was the farthest thing from the truth. It was just an error, it was a human error, and nothing did happen. But I remember I had to take that call, and I was quaking in my boots because I thought they were going to come in and shut down this event, and had to talk him through it. And he realized he had been called by a parent from that team.
Yeah.
He or she, whoever. I think it was a female that called me. But yeah, so we talked our way out of that one, but that was a scary one.
It was
so
scary.
It did make you realize the risk you were taking on. We actually had to write the original bylaws, and we had to write the judging sheet. So it was creating everything from nothing.
Right.
And I remember at the time, then I did a few things in North Dakota and Wisconsin, and some of the things we did in Wisconsin or in Minnesota spread to those other states because we were far more organized than they were at the time. So what we did here, it just spread out to the other states, helping with the organization. And I think Minnesota has a unique situation in that one thing that's unique about us is that we weren't governed by a business. In a lot of the other states, businesses took over their state competition. And I was running Just for Kicks back then too, but I always tried to keep a line between wore the hat for the board of directors when I was there, and the hat for my business separately. And we kept it that way, where you see a lot of states right now. I think there's only, if I'm correct, 13 states that are not affiliated with cheer and dance together. And we are very proud that we've kept dance separate. You will go to some state tournaments and you will see cheerleading on one side of the gym and dance on the other, and they only get a half of a court to perform. This is true, it's going on right now in a lot of places, because it is owned by a business and they're affiliated with the state, but it's also run through a business. And then you don't know that everything's on the up and up and that it's for the best interest of the kids. And I think that's what's been really great about Minnesota. So let's talk about State High School League. When the beginning, when we wanted to go in, they didn't want us. And then there were 3 times that they came to us and wanted us to go in. And the first 2 times, we didn't want to go in because it would have been basically a hostile takeover. I think what happened is they found out we were making money. Our association was making a lot of money. So you can talk about that.
And athletic directors kind of pushed it as well, because they liked all of their programs to be under one umbrella. So the first time the league approached us, and they wanted to take us in as an art form, not as a sport. And we didn't want that. So there was a whole petition through the representative assembly with the high school league to bring us in as an art. And I was president of the association at that time, and we didn't want to go in as an art. We do artistic things, but we thought we were more of an athletic sport thing. So we did a lot of petitioning of the representative assembly of who was going to vote and that sort of thing. And then I presented in front of all these people all by myself. It was a work day, and I was at to let me off for the work day. And I presented by myself, and we didn't go in. And I was so joyful. It was over in St. Paul, and I was the only one there, and this is before cell phones or anything, and I'm all by myself in St. Paul, and I'm so excited that they didn't take us in as an art, and there was no one to tell. So I'm like skipping around in the skyways in St. Paul, just smiling like crazy, and there's no one to tell. Then the second time they wanted to do it again, they tweaked it a little bit, but still wanted us as an arts activity. We didn't want that. The coaches didn't want that, and the association didn't. So again, I was the president, so I went and talked against it, and it was again defeated, so we didn't go in then. Then the league realized if they wanted us to be under their umbrella, and athletic directors were pushing for this, they needed to work with us. The first 2 times, they just did it on their own. So we had a committee, and I served on it. I think you were there too. And then it was designed more as a interscholastic sport. And so that third time, we did lobby to go in under the sport thing. It wasn't initially a full-fledged sport because of Title IX issues, which is a whole nother ball game. We probably won't get into that this morning. But we did go in that third time and then went under the umbrella of the State High School League. And their claim was that we would get fabulous media attention. We would get good newspaper coverage in the sports section. There were all of these promises that were made. I think we're still on that journey of getting the sports recognition that we need, and to be treated as a sport. I think it's better. It's way better than it used to be. Way better.
It didn't happen right away.
No,
I think we went in and during that time, I remember people still being unsure if we wanted to go in, and finally, as a board, we were like, we either pull together and go in, or it's going to be like a hostile takeover, and we'll get nothing that we want.
Right.
So we did all pull together and make a decision. We have to do this, but we have to do it to try to save some of what we want and the integrity of our sport. And at that time, I remember going to a meeting, I bet you were at this too, and it was at the league, and it was dance studio owners.
Oh, yeah.
Basically against dance team coaches, and it was very, very heated, and it was a lot of people in that boardroom. I bet there were 50 studios, because I think they felt if dance team went into the high school league, it would ruin their businesses. So we had to come up with a proposal or a method that was in the original bylaws that would say, okay, you can still dance at your dance studio if you go into the league, but you can't compete during the competitive season. I feel that was the kind of the decision that was made. But even at that point, I remember our local studio in Brainerd having a clipboard with like signatures to try to be against the state high school league. So it was really a hot topic
It was a
all over
very
the
hot
state.
topic.
It was very
Yeah.
divided a lot of friendships and things. But finally, it did go in, and that board, that meetings that we held, I think people have no idea, because I remember turning in my mileage voucher, and it was over 3,000 miles driven for those meetings. So, you know, at about 240 miles to Minneapolis from where I'm at, or round trip, you know, that was a lot of miles driven to go meet on these various things.
There was a lot of work, and there were people on both sides of the issue. Once we did go in, other sports, their rules are by a national federation. Well, dance team doesn't have that. So we needed to develop our own rules book for Minnesota dance team, and I was on that original committee that sat down at the league office and drafted the rules book. And it's expanded now, but some of the first basic things that I helped write are still in there. And a judge helped as well, and it was collaborative, working together, trying to make it the best it could be for kids, and athletic directors had to approve it, but the rules book then has been expanded on. It was quite thin originally, but then it's expanded, and yeah, so it's been fun to be, it was fun to be on the ground floor back in the late 70s, early 80s, and still fun to be involved, as we are, still all these years later, in making the best program possible for high school kids. They learn so much more than dance. Dance is kind of the added bonus, but they learn so much about life and how to manage time and how to be dedicated to something and to work hard. And no matter whether your program is real successful competing or not, the kids still get an amazing experience from just being part of it, being part of this whole wonderful world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I second that.
Something.
And I feel Minnesota dance, compared to every other state, is just in a league of its own. I really do feel that way. And our college teams as well. And I think one of the differences is partly like at camp even, our coaches share. We are fierce competitors, but we would tell each other our secrets. And I think that is what has that feeling that we share has been really something that I've been really proud of. And I remember my athletic director early on going, "Don't tell all your secrets when you're teaching at camp." And and maybe it's stupid when you do, but I also think that's what makes us grow. And we all have shared our secrets. And we'll have coaches classes here at camp where people are telling what they do and helping each other, and it's made us all get stronger. And I've had coaches come in from other states to this camp, and they're like, "It's not like that in our state. It's not like it. People don't share." So I'm kind of I'm proud of that, and I'm proud that you lead by example with all the younger coaches. And I feel like that's one of the neat things about being in it for the long haul is you see a whole different side of it. At first, it was all about winning. It was all about you just see it from totally a different side. And now I see it more for mentoring and how can I help a younger person stay in the game. And there's so much pressure on coaches from parents, from school districts, and I talk to young coaches that are being eaten alive by the booster clubs or whatever, and I feel like that's one of the neat things about being in it for the long haul is you can go, okay, try this, try that, do this, and give them some strength to have a backbone to stand up and stand up and be counted for in their community and not let kids walk all over them, because kids need leadership. And like Leslie was saying, the great things about being on dance team are far greater than winning a trophy. It's all the things they learn, and it's neat when you're at this point to see all your kids that have gone through your program, your team members, your athletes, and see what they're doing now with their lives and how far they've come. It's just amazing. And I remember I had a kid studying at college for her finals, and it was in a career that was quite a difficult, getting her doctor. She was becoming a doctor, and writing to me going, I used my competition strategies to get through that exam because I needed to use that mental edge to help me through the process. And that's neat,
Oh, I have that all the time.
Yeah, very
exactly.
neat to hear. So
Exactly. And I think of and I don't know that, I was a teacher my whole working career as well. And I always thought of the gym as just a different classroom. And I was a biology teacher, so it's very different what I do in the gym than what I did in my classroom. But I think if you look upon your coaching as being a teacher as well, you're teaching all kinds of things and mentoring those kids. And it's just a different kind of classroom that you're in. And I think that that helps to view it that way. And then you can see the impact on the kids, I think, too, if you view it that way.
Okay, so what else did
What do
we
you
cover?
think? I don't know. What,
We could do another day, like we could do tomorrow morning of this as well if you guys want.
Oh.
If you guys think of something, like we could even just plan on doing it and then.
sure, we can think if there's
We can
anything
think if
else.
there's anything. I
I mean,
think
there's
we
so
covered
many
a lot.
things to talk about,
Yeah.
but I think
Oh,
we
no.
hit
The high
the
point.
major historical things,
Yeah,
don't you?
yeah.
It's really neat to hear though. Really, really neat.
Can you
to
tell
hear.
we're a little passionate about this?
yeah, yeah. And what I love, so like Cindy and you are on such different like you're a teacher, she's a business. Like it's such a
Yeah.
different. It's
Yeah,
so
it
it's
is.
such
Right.
a unique.
Our lives are very different in terms of what we've done.
Yeah.
But yeah, see, I think of her as a teacher as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
even though,
I am
you
a
know,
teacher.
even though you have to do the business stuff.
Yeah.
But
The one thing I didn't talk about, I feel like I learned so much from being on the board, from
Yes.
all of you.
yes,
Like I remember, is this still filming?
Yep.
Okay. So I feel like I grew so much being on that board. I remember when I was young, things would come up that I hadn't even heard of or
Sure.
or experienced. All of us probably. And I just feel like being with those 12 women from different backgrounds, everyone added something. And I put in a lot of time and a lot of volunteering, but anything you do like that comes back to you because I learned so much, just about everything. I remember the first time being involved with parliamentary procedure because we felt our meetings weren't effective enough, so we went to that and I was like, whoa, I had never experienced that. And it was great. And just even writing the articles of incorporation or the handbook or the bylaws, and we had to proof them and we had to, go back to the drawing board and change them, and then reviewing score sheets is something we should talk a little bit about because I feel like one of the things that happens is somebody will go, I think we need to try this on the score sheet, and we want to go, did that, 1985, been there, done that,
Right.
it didn't work, and you don't want to be that way, but
Yeah.
how many score sheets do you think we've been through?
oh gosh, I don't know. I need to, I've kept, since that first, I've been on the board since the very first meeting until I just retired from that. So as I did that, and of course back in 1980, I didn't know how long I would do any of this. We didn't know what we were doing. I have notebooks with every correspondence that came out from the association, every agenda, every meeting minutes, every letter we got from somebody else, any thank you note from whatever, and they're all chronological in notebooks. And you
Probably
can
color
imagine-
coded.
well, there's a lot of stuff, and they're all, there's a lot of notebooks, and MADT now has a storage room that we rent, storage unit, and they're all in there in chronological order, so you can look back at what was going on in 1984 in the association and then the dance team world of Minnesota, and it's all in there in one place. And again, that was before electronics. There was no computers hardly. I mean, everything we did was typed and whatever.
Yeah.
But so it's all in there, and it would take some effort to go back and find all the score sheets, but I documented everything from that first meeting in 1980 at Minnetonka High School up until my last board meeting, and actually I'm still going to go to the one this coming August because I'm still serving as treasurer to end up the fiscal year, but it's all there. And so again, when I started, I don't know, I guess I'm just kind of anal about stuff like that, so I thought somebody better keep track, and it was me. And so
History
all
of all
score
this,
sheets,
but yeah.
I mean,
Because that, just even an example that, you remember stuff that personally happened to you, of course. And one year, I believe the year was 1987, we never used to throw out the high and lows of the
Right.
scores. And that year, I particularly remember this because we had 11 judges have us in first place. And we had one judge give us a 3 of a score, which nobody got 3s back then. So it had to be a personal bias or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Because, I remember we had the lowest kick score given in the state that year by that one judge, and it kept us out of winning. but 11 judges had us winning. And that's just an example of high lows being thrown out. That was something
Sure.
that didn't happen back then.
Right.
And everything that occurs now happened because something went wrong.
Yeah.
You know, like
The
all
whole
of the
ranking system is for that reason.
yeah, the ranking system is like that, and I had judged in another state in Iowa, and they had that same issue where a team got denied going to finals because one judge goofed up, and I remember coming home going, whoa, you know, we've got to make sure that we're not doing that. And a lot of the things like two-sided competitions, nobody ever thought of that before. I saw that in Illinois and came back and go, we got to try this. It's just sometimes things that are outside the box that you don't even think
And
of.
people were very resistant to that.
Oh,
at first.
yeah.
How is that
Yeah,
going to
that's
work?
never gonna work.
Oh, no way. But
And that's something actually that's never going to work. We heard a lot.
yes,
And
we tried it anyway.
but sometimes we would try it anyway.
Yeah.
And I remember things like conference meets. My my athletic director was actually way before his time in terms of wanting dance team to be something. And back when I first coached, I had my superintendent, my athletic director, and my principal sitting up in the stands. And that's very unusual.
Very
back in
unusual.
that day. And I feel
Even today, that's
even
unusual.
today. Well, I feel I had more support back then sometimes than now, but I needed it, you know.
And I have good support, but it
Yeah.
hasn't always been that way.
No, and many places, many towns don't have that. And I think sometimes their backing helped us, you know, me be more proactive, knowing that I had that support. And that's a neat thing,
Yeah.
where some programs don't have that.
But the journey of how we've been judged is just kind of crazy. Like we said, we initially judged each other at meets, which was, whoa, really crazy. Talk about a shot in the dark in terms of what could happen. And then, this is not chronological, but for a while, we had
I know what you're going to say.
judges assigned certain
Categories.
So there would be a judge that would just judge formations. There'd be a judge that would be on the side of the gym and just judge things from the side.
The floor judge.
The
Yeah.
floor judge.
Yeah.
We had a uniform judge, so
An inspection.
This is when it was just in kick and it was inspection, and you get your whole team lined up, and they would look at each kid and they'd stand back and make sure all the skirts were at the same level, and then you would get a score based on not the cuteness factor or whatever, but that it was all the same.
The
And it
same,
looked the
uniformity.
same.
It was
Yeah.
uniformity. And then the floor judge was checking to see if your lines were straight. But we had come up with that concept as a board to have, okay, one judge judges kicks, one formations, like she was
Yeah.
saying. But the bad thing there was if that person had not a good opinion, you weren't getting 11 opinions or,
Right.
or
Just
whatever.
one person
One
giving you a
person.
judge, or
And we used to
scoring.
have more judges than they have now,
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah.
But probably we needed them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but I mean,
so-
that was kind of crazy. And it's certainly when you had a judge standing on the side of the gym, and this was before Jazz was added, this was only kick. Boy, did you make sure that your lines were straight from the side. You know, I spent a lot of time coaching on the side. I still do. Yeah, that was a whole nother thing that we had
Right,
to think
but
about.
you tried everything to see what would make
Yeah.
it better. We kept trying to improve the process. Sometimes you took a step back and then had to go, oh, well, great idea, but that didn't work. So it was all just, it evolved. It was a process that started from really nowhere, and then it just kept getting better and better. And our score sheet that we just had revised this year is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
you
it
know?
looks wonderful. Back before we went into the high school league too, at every competition, the judges would have these little tiny cassette recorders. And as a coach, you would bring a cassette tape for every judge. And then when it was your turn to compete, they would pop the cassette in. And then while you were dancing, they would talk through the dance. The girl on third from the end did this, and this looks good, and da-da-da-da-da. And then they would score you, and then you would get back like 7
Yeah, you'd get all these tapes back, a box of them.
with your score sheets, and then as a coach, the music's in the background, so you know exactly where in the dance they were talking about. Whereas if it's just on paper, you're not exactly sure when they saw what. but with the tapes.
It was
So then
great.
we would sit and listen to them and you know, okay, now here's where this judge saw that wasn't so good. This judge really, you know, and so it was awesome to get that kind of feedback. We don't get that anymore.
No, I loved that.
I did too.
I did.
It was great.
I didn't love running a competition that had it because it was
No.
so hard to
Oh, keeping track of all
orchestrate.
that.
You had to have all these little kind of Walkman recorders, and they
Yeah.
all had to work, and they all had to have batteries, and then you had to have lines of cassette tapes.
Yeah,
and,
in boxes and yeah.
Yeah, oh, that was different.
But it
So.
was effective in terms of giving us good feedback.
Something else that we haven't talked about is just the evolution of even choreography and when you mentioned cassette tapes, that's what made me think of it, because when I first started coaching, editing music, I think we were one of the first teams to start editing music with the wows and pows in it.
The sound effect
the
things.
sound effects and the edited where you put two songs together. Because seriously, when we first started, if a song was too slow, you couldn't use it. If it was too fast, you couldn't use it. We had no such thing as speed control. We were using records. And I can remember performing with a record that skipped.
Oh,
and
me too.
Then you had to, okay, girls, take it back. We'll try it again. You'd put a piece of gum with a nickel on it to weigh down the arm of the to hold
Record player?
The record player. So if it was scratched, it would work. And I know that sounds crazy, but the first year we did edited music, I had to go to I live in Brainerd, so of course it was the In Fisherman Radio, and we went there and edited our music, and it was on reel to reel. And I can remember it going whoa, 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 like between where you're trying to find that 8-count break, and we'd take a Sharpie marker and you'd make it on the tape where the 8-count break was, and they would actually cut it with a blade and then piece those two ends of the music together. That's where cut and paste
Came from.
and it really was the truth. And I remember one year we had 27 edits, and I thought the guy was going to have a heart attack because he had to keep doing that. Where now you just take a computer and you cut it out, and you know
It takes no time.
no time
and
at
it's
all
flawless.
compared to what we
Yeah.
used to have to do. And
Yeah.
so just even the changes from being able to YouTube and see things and
Right.
Google music choices. I remember having to, order tons of records, and at a great expense because you didn't know if they were going to be good or not. You couldn't listen to anything. And just wasn't the access to music or the access to, if you wanted to see great ideas, you had to travel. You had to travel to New York, or you had to travel, and I feel like now comparing myself to my daughter, who's choreographing, the knowledge she has access to at her age compared to what I had, there's no comparison, because you had to pound the pavement and find it. You had to get out there and watch. You had to travel. It was just a lot different.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started coaching, we did dance to records, and I can remember in the gym for half times and stuff, standing around that record player to make sure no
You don't
kid
touch that.
walked by and too
Bump
heavy and
it.
skipped it. But at practice, I used a big old green reel-to-reel
Yep.
tape recorder, which nobody even knows what I still have those a few of those
I have some of the
reel-to-reel
reels.
tapes.
I saved
I don't
them.
have a player for
No,
them.
I don't either.
But I'm sure school doesn't either. But to think just the evolution of going from that to our iPods that we use now, or playing it off the computer, and now on the computer you can, in a flash, just change the speed.
Right.
Let's see if this speed looks better in this section. You can just do it. And back then, everything was just so hard, and you didn't do a lot of that because it wasn't
right.
available.
I
You
remember when
couldn't.
cassette tapes came up with a dual player.
Oh, that was something.
And then if you got good at it, you could edit your own tapes by
Yeah.
pressing pause.
Yep.
And then just in a second, you had to let it up,
Yeah.
and then you could edit music, and I got pretty good at that.
I did too.
Yeah.
But it would take like 50,000 tries.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get
it
you
took
know,
so
it
many
was not
tries.
a
Like
5-minute operation.
You kept ditching them, but
Yeah.
then they came up with a cassette player that would stop when there was no sound, so that you could find the break between songs. That was a really big
Yep,
deal.
yep.
Because if you had like 10 songs on a cassette, you couldn't just go to song 1, song 2. You had to
No, right.
fast forward it, and
Yeah.
you'd waste so much time finding your music.
And
Like
then
right now,
when-
I have it written down at 30 seconds. We're gonna start here.
Right.
There was none of that.
And then when the speed control cassette players came
Oh,
out,
that was like heaven.
incredible.
That was like the
Yeah,
greatest
that
thing
was
ever.
fabulous.
And we thought it was really high tech.
Yeah,
so.
we had it all together then.
Yeah.
But even just when you look at just the judging, that's amazing. When you look at just the level of choreography now compared to what we did.
Right.
When you look at the speed of which we do things, it's amazing. When you look at the music changes, how we delivered music, how
Compared
that has
to now.
changed. Any uniform, any category you look at.
Yeah, even
it's-
costumes, like we all,
Yeah.
back then, you made your costumes. I remember we ordered our leotards from Sears.
Sure.
That's where we
Yeah.
ordered our leotards. There wasn't all these dance companies, and that was part of the reason we formed our catalog. It was out of necessity to help people find things. And I remember back in the day going, where do you get the stuff you need? Because there was no internet, and you couldn't
No.
find. So you'd get a catalog in the mail,
Yeah.
and that's where you ordered. But a lot of our parents sewed our costumes.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
because you just couldn't afford, you didn't have the money either to go buy it.
Right,
So
right.
that was a big change.
Boy, we sound old, don't we?
I know, and I don't feel old,
No,
believe
I
it or
don't
not.
either.
I
I
feel
don't
young.
either.
I feel excited still about what I do. The
Yeah.
starting over every year is what I love,
it's
and
the
trying to do
best.
it bigger and better.
Yeah.
One of
With
my
new kids and. it's
yeah,
just
new
awesome.
families.
Yeah.
One of my funny stories is I'd been to California, and my team had gone to nationals out there, which was that'd be another whole topic. But I came home with a great move because in Minnesota, everybody had only done hands like this or like this. We called these park hands at the time. They were named after Park Center because they always did their thumbs. Then there was blades and there were fists. But we saw a really innovative move, and it was to do jazz hands. And believe it or not, we got cheers for doing jazz hands. That was considered a big move back in the 80s,
Yeah.
early 80s. So
Huh.
There's so many memories, it's just.
that's probably enough. We've probably talked
Yeah,
enough.
yeah.
So let me get this right. You guys had uniform judges at one point, and then
Yeah.
you had to hand make your own uniforms.
Yeah.
Right.
So how did you make them consistently the same?
We had one mom make them all.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
one person would make.
We
them
would
all.
measure from the floor. I remember doing this so that our skirts were the same
Same.
from the floor.
So no matter how tall a kid was.
No, how tall or short that they, your shorties would have skirts like that were really short, and
Yeah.
your talls would be, a
So
little
that when
more.
they all
Yeah, so
lined
when they
up,
all
it
lined
would
up,
be-
they'd be the same. And you kind of could have a gradual, but
Yeah,
it was
it was-
perfect.
Yeah.
And your socks had to be perfect, and your tights or
Yeah,
whatever you had.
yeah.
So
Huh. That's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. It is, when you start to think
I
about
remember
it.
we were trying. It's just funny because I remember getting home from state, and I'd wanted sequins on our state costumes. And this is like in the early 80s, and I remember getting home, and they were on my doorstep when I got home. They hadn't come in time for state.
Oh.
Because, wherever you ordered them from, you couldn't find out. There was just no communication. I don't
Right.
know how
Well,
we
there
did
was
it.
no way to
Like,
access
where were they? I
information.
didn't know. They
Yeah.
never came, and and they
You
came.
couldn't track a
I couldn't
package.
track a package, and I remember coming home from state and seeing them on my doorstep. Great. They came now, and state's over.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's good.